My name is Laura van Weissenberg. I will be a moderator for today. Before we dig into the agenda, I would like to walk you through a couple of housekeeping rules for today. So please mute your microphones. You can also disable your cameras. This workshop will be recorded and it will be published on YouTube. All the presentations will be available online after the workshop on the website of the workshops, so the dedicated reuser mini site. You can ask any questions. We encourage you to do so via Slido, so not in the chat on WebEx, but via Slido. And we will tackle all of them during the dedicated session at the end of the workshop. So with that said, I think I will give the floor to our head of unit, Mr. Luca Martinelli, for the opening.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning and greetings from Luxembourg. I'm here in the publications office headquarters together with Cindy Zlugocki, which is the driving force for the organization of this workshop, and I would like to thank her. And you will introduce progressively the other colleagues that are contributing to this. It's not sunny, but in the coming days we'll have real summer with 30 degrees. So those of you who are not in Luxembourg, you can visit it and have some holidays. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining this workshop. As you probably know, but maybe this is not the first time you join our workshop, the aim, the purpose of these workshops is to bring the community of reusers up to date with the latest developments taking place in the TED family of information systems. So our aim is to facilitate the work of reusers of TED data so that they can be fully exploited by reusers and reusers can create added value services. We meet with this user community twice a year in a webinar like today and at the TED Together event, usually scheduled. We are now at the third edition at the end of the year. In the TED Together event, we try to gather the different communities, not only reusers, but also e-senders and the standardization community working at the e-procurement ontology, working on eForms and working on the ESPD, European Single Procurement Document. Maybe you attended the latest edition that took place last year. And for those who attended, you might remember that the highlight, let's say the main policy change that is foreseen in the area of public procurement is that announced new Public Procurement Act that the Commission is preparing. We are working with colleagues in DG Enterprise and Competitiveness, DG Grow, at the preparation of the proposal that should be adopted and made public quite soon. And then, of course, there will be the legislative phase with Council and Parliament that is expected to take at least 1 year. You may pose questions on any aspect, both technical and policy related. And as you will remember, we had a presentation from DG Grow colleagues in November. We had a productive questions and answer session, and we'll publish presentations, recordings, as we've been doing for these events. I would like to announce, and this is a save the date, that this year the TED Together event will take place on 24th and 25th of November. As usually, it will be a hybrid event, partially in presence. We have limited places that will assign on a first in, first served basis, and of course there will be also the online part, so it's open to anyone that is interested from the 3 communities that I mentioned. I would like to stress that this is not a purely technical workshop. As I said, there is this policy dimension that is growing in importance in this phase of the Commission, European Commission work. We have the public procurement revision of the directives with the new Public Procurement Act soon out, but we also have some changes in the area of the data policy. And I would like now to go a bit over the agenda for today's, and we have a special guest, 2 special guests as first item, which actually are linked to what I mentioned, the changes also in the open data policy, in the data policy. So these are the colleagues from the unit European Data Portal that is working in the same directorate of the Publications Office as us. It will be a presentation on EU Open Data Policy and the European Data Portal by Hanna Crocker and Nicolas Petalas. They will go over the basics of EU Open Data Policy and the role of the European Data Portal. So expect insights about policy changes, services, and how you can use this additional service for reuse activities. The second presentation will be from my colleague Carl Ferrand, that I'm sure you have already met. Carl Ferrand is head of sector for reception and production in our unit, and will provide an update on eForms. You know, eForms plans. eForms have been with us for probably more than 5 years now, and they are the standard for notices. They've changed a lot our operational landscape, and eForms are constantly evolving, and this is very important for both for e-senders but also for reusers, and Carl will show you what we plan to do in terms of changes of these important standards for cross-border collaboration and interoperability. After that, we'll have a coffee break around 10:30, and we'll go on with articulated presentation, quite, I would say, is a threefold presentation on the TED Open Data Service. We have already had the chance to present the basics of the service that is being progressively built and launched. We'll have the head of sector for standardization and IT support in my unit, Yanis Rouzochazakis, that will provide you the roadmap and the updates introducing the service. And then we have 2 experts working with us that will go a bit more in depth. Andrea Pasare will present TED Notice as a knowledge graph. She will explain how TED notices are translated into TED data. And Anup Kumar will present TED Data for Analytics, a live demonstration showing the service in action. With this, I think, of course, then at the end, we'll close with, I hope, a rich question and answer session. And you, of course, are invited to ask anything. With this, I would give back the floor to Laura. Thank you, and have a good workshop.
Thank you very much, Luca. So, before moving into the first presentation, we'll take a bit of time to break the ice, as we usually do, with some Slido questions that will allow you, those of you who haven't connected to Slido yet, to do so, and also to get to know each other a little bit better. So, Cindy, if we can see the first question. All right, so the first question we ask is, what kind of reuser are you? In order for us to be able to see what type of different reusers we have in the room. So the different options are public entity, NGO, economic operator, academia or research, press, or other. So far we see the first three being, two now, being the most predominant. So we'll give it a couple of more moments, as I see that only 7 people have answered so far. So hopefully we will get a broader picture of what type of work the people who are here are doing. Let's see, we still have, I didn't pay attention if economic operator was on the first place to start with, but I see that the situation is quite dynamic, so it's moving constantly, which is a nice thing. So let's see, maybe we have more people joining and answering this first poll, and we can see if the situation is still developing. We don't see still one participant ranking, so I will be waiting a little bit more. I should have prepared some jokes for this time, but I didn't, so now I have to watch closely what is happening. Okay, I think that we are good now. We see that we have a nice mix of the different possibilities that we put in the poll. So with that, we can move to the next question, if you will, Cindy. Thank you very much. So the question is rather simple. Have you ever attended previous events for TED reusers? This is also for us to understand if we have new people in the room, because those that will have attended previous events will know a little bit more about eForms, about the evolutions, whereas for the ones that haven't attended any of these events before, we would need to maybe detail a little bit more. And by all means, I encourage, especially those of you who are new, I see now 20%, 25%, sorry, of the people being new. I encourage you to ask questions whenever you don't understand anything of what is being said in the presentations or the terminology or whatever that may be. So thank you very much for participating in these short polls. And with that, I will now give the floor to the colleagues from the data portal. So Hannah and Nick, welcome. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Luca, also for the introduction before. And I want to ask if you hear me and if you hear me well, basically.
I hear you and I hear you well. I hope that the others also do.
Good. So thank you again. And as Luca and Laura have already introduced us, I will repeat a few things about us. So I'm Nick and I have my colleague Hannah with me. We work in another unit of the Publications Office that is in charge of the European Data Portal. The name is European Data and Related Services Unit. As you may know, the expertise of the Publications Office in 2 words is to make things publicly available for access and reuse to stimulate economic growth, transparency, and so on. One aspect of this is the public procurement, and my colleagues from Tenders Electronic Daily are in charge of that. We deal with data. The Publications Office also publishes EU law, publications of the EU institutions, and so on. We have quite a packed presentation for today, so I try to focus on what is most important for you. So we'll speak about what the European Data Portal is, what open data is, of course, a few things about the EU data policy, some useful features of the portal for you to know, a few things about public procurement of the portal, and we have a small session of questions and hopefully answers. I say hopefully because we are in charge of managing the European data portal, not of developing the EU data policy. So although this gives the context of how we operate, because the data portal implements this policy, and we are not the experts on the development of the policy, and we are not the right people to answer detailed questions on the policy. But we'll do our best, and we'll be very happy to answer any questions you have about the European data portal. So an introduction would start basically with what is open data. Now, if I send a probe to the moon or to Mars, it will start sending me a description of this word, like temperature, geological metrics, density, and so on. These are data. They describe the word. They are not my opinion. Data can be many different things. How much it rained and where. How many contracts a particular financial operator has won from a specific community. We're talking about procurement data. It could be geospatial data, the morphology of the ground, you name it. Nowadays, the boundaries of what is data is thinner and thinner. As I said before, the Publications Office publishes EU law, other publications, but all these are data from a particular angle. So all these machines that go and find publications in different languages, and they understand how to translate something from Greek to Polish, for example, or to English, they get trained using these multilingual publications. So this is data, in fact. But in the strict sense, we're talking now about data sets. Many people associate this with statistics. It can be a lot more than statistics, as I explained before. And when we're talking about open data, we're talking about data that are available basically for everybody to find, use, and reuse. You don't need to pay. You don't need to have a subscription. You are not blocked by copyrights or by any legal obstacles or any other technical mechanism of control. This is what your open data is very quickly. So what is the European Data Portal? The European Data Portal is a portal, a platform that provides central access to European open data from member states, from EU institutions, so that the data of Italy, for example, the data of Sweden are also they have the national portals, but they also exist in the European Data Portal. You don't have to go to each individual portal. If you are a businessman and you want to do business in Europe or in 5 countries of Europe, you don't need to visit 5 portals and look into each of them. You can go to the European Data Portal, but there you can also find data of the EU institutions, like Eurostat data, for example. So this is the European Data Portal, and the Commission has established that as a tool to promote transparency, economic growth, and diffusion of knowledge. I will refer now a little bit to the legal basis, so how it all started. But very basic, because you are not going to become legal experts now in the domain of data, and we don't have a lot of time. So it all starts, let's say, with the PSI directive of 2003. That's the first legal basis. It's the first EU-wide framework calling for the use of public sector information. They are not talking yet about open data. They're talking about documents and public sector information. And the key principle is that public sector information that is not classified, of course, not where the army is, other type of information should be reusable. And the focus is on economic reuse. This is the starting legal foundation. And then in 2011, we have a Commission decision on the reuse of Commission documents. So basically, the European Commission begins to apply open principle to its own documents. It wants to lead by example. So it says that Commission documents that are not classified should be open to people to reuse them for any purpose. Leading by example, and the Commission invites other institutions to follow that. Then in 2013, we have the revised PSI directive. It extends the scope, it touches libraries, museums, and archives, so not only the strict public sector that we imagine, It encourages machine-readable formats, and also it calls for marginal cost pricing. That means public institutions should charge somebody to reuse their data no more than the marginal cost of making this data available, which, if you know basic economics, if you have something online, it's zero. Before that, there were public bodies that sold datasets commercially or asked for high licensing fees or subscriptions. Then in 2009, in 2015, we have the launch of the European Data Portal, so a central portal for national data. And in 2016, the EU Open Data Portal that publishes data of EU institutions. But why to have two portals? Short, they will be merged into one, as you will see. In 2019, we have the Open Data Directive. So it's the current legal backbone. It replaces the PSI directive. Open data by default becomes the rule. It introduces the concept of high-value data sets and a number of rules for member states and public institutions to publish them. And then we have the data cover, two important packages that come: Data Governance Act, Data Act. I'm sorry to go so fast. There's a lot of things that we can say, but Hannah will touch these things. And on 2020, as you see, we have the merging of the two portals to data.europa.eu, which becomes lately European Data Portal. So basically, the European Data Portal is a portal that provides access to national, regional, Bavaria, for example, and EU data. And it's called European because it's not only EU countries, it's many other countries from Europe. That's why the name is European Data Portal. And to say just two things how I perceive it, I believe the EU Open Data Policy has evolved from initial rules of public sector information to a comprehensive framework for publishing datasets, which enables data spaces and cross-border use. So we have an increasing depth and scope from documents to structured datasets, and lately to infrastructures that enable interoperability and AI use. So now I give the floor to Hannah that will speak about the EU Open Data Policy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Now we've had a little bit about how data policy has developed, especially in regards to the European Data Portal, and I will speak about some more current developments. As Nick has already mentioned, it is DG Connect that is actually in charge of this, so if you have any very specific questions, it would be best to directly contact them. But I'm happy to give you a little overview of what is happening in this field. Mainly, as you may have already gathered from Nick's part of the presentation, there are a lot of different regulations and directives out there right now to govern data and open data. And that is why the EU Commission is looking to simplify this. And the simplification process in this case is called a digital omnibus. So what this means is that the Commission takes these four directives and regulations that I've listed here, and it consolidates them into one single data act in order to create more legal certainty, make sure there are no discrepancies between the different legal initiatives, and just make it a bit simpler for companies and other entities to follow these rules. So there are also some differences that have come up. There have been some amendments. Mainly, well, there have been quite a few actually, but these are the ones that I wanted to highlight. For example, data holders can now refuse the disclosure of trade secrets if they think that there's a high risk of leakage to other countries with weaker protections. Then another thing that has changed is that the obligation to share data with governments is now clearer. So before it said that this had to happen when there were exceptional needs. Now it says only in public emergencies. So this should reduce the ambiguity in this area. And then lastly, there are also clearer rules concerning switching between cloud services. So the EU Commission is looking to make it very clear when this is possible and also list exemptions. There are also a few other things like a few changes to GDPR, like, for example, also cookie banners will function differently in the future. But I'm not going to go into too much detail there now, because I also wanted to briefly discuss the data union strategy, which is a more high-level initiative that looks to tackle three big kind of issues. So on the one hand, we have data scarcity, because AI training takes a lot of data, and right now there is not enough available, so we want to make even more high-quality data available. Then secondly, there is a lot of regulatory complexity, as you already could tell from Nick's part of the presentation and the digital omnibus. And then lastly, we have global competition. Data has become incredibly valuable, and the EU wants to take an open but assertive approach here. What that means, I'm going to discuss in a second. So looking at these three pillars in a little bit more detail, we have the first one about data scarcity. So here, the EU's challenge is twofold. On the one hand, it wants to make high-quality data sets more widely available. And here there are several initiatives in order to make that happen. For example, the support to common European data spaces that make data sharing more easier, and also making high-value data sets more accessible. And then lastly, it also wants to create more data labs that help with the anonymization of data, data pooling, data labeling, and so on, to really make sure that the data can be used for AI training. And then the second challenge that the EU wants to tackle here is it wants to ensure that we have the computing infrastructure that is necessary to process the data sets. And here's where the Cloud and AI Development Act comes in, which looks at the supply chains of clouds and AI. Then here, the second pillar, we have already heard there is a lot of legal complexity at the moment. So apart from implementing the digital omnibus proposal, there is also additional help in order to make it clearer for companies what rules they exactly have to abide by and what they have to do. So here there are now model contractual terms, guidance for specific sectors like the vehicle kind of producing sector, and then there are also frequently asked questions, just to make it a little bit easier for all stakeholders involved. And then lastly, as I mentioned, there is a lot of competition. This is mainly because some other parts of the world are using more protectionist strategy when it comes to their data. So the situation could arise where foreign actors have unrestricted access to the EU data market, while European companies face unjustified barriers abroad. And for that reason, the EU wants to take action, namely these three things that are listed on the slide. Firstly, the EU wants to embed fair conditions into international digital trade, and also use its structured exchanges like digital partnerships to address imbalances and take proportionate action where it is necessary. Secondly, the EU wants to help companies, for example, share data across borders more easily. So here it is looking at interoperability, and also into providing tools like standard contractual clauses in order to just make it easier for businesses to share data if they wish to do so. And then lastly, sorry, is that if you could mute yourself. Okay, should be good now. Sorry. Yeah, lastly, the EU is also looking to deepen digital partnerships, especially with candidate countries and our neighbors, and also to engage actively in different fora like the UN, the G7, and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is basically what the EU's open but assertive approach means, and what the EU is envisioning for the European data strategy. So we are now going to talk about the data portal itself, since you have a broader overview of what the data policy landscape looks like.
Thank you, Hannah. So let's move on to some more practical things. If you want to use the portal, the main resource, the wealth of the portal is the data. It's about maybe everything you can imagine, that's not classified. And you may be overwhelmed because there are currently something like 1.6 million data sets from all European countries and EU institutions, as I said. So Quickly, some things that can make your life easier. First, use the filtering on the left-hand side. From the scope selector, you can choose European, international, or national data. Provenance is the country, if you're looking for a specific country, like Germany, like Italy. Catalogs are catalogs of particular public bodies that publish data. For example, if you're looking for the Eurostat catalog, you go there and you choose Eurostat. Formats, it's if you want what format you want the data set to be, CSV, XLS, and so on. And then you can use Boolean operators. Very quickly again, when you use or, for example, if I look for population or education or science, it will bring me back results that are related to any of those. So population only or population and education only. If I choose and, it will give me only results that are related to all three. So if something is related to population and science, it will not come up because it doesn't include education. Then I can use brackets. This avoids the need to perform multiple searches for combinations. So if I want to search something that could be environment and refurbish, I can use the formula that you see there. So environment or nature and refurbish or reuse. So I will get environment and refurbish. If it's only environment, I will not get it because I have the operator and. But if it is nature and reuse, I will get it because I have both of these options and the condition and is satisfied. Double quote returns datasets containing the keywords in exactly the same order. So for example, as you see, manual public space, if I type that with double quote, I will get a dataset that has in its metadata manual public space, but not something that has manual space public, for example. Then I can use a question mark to replace a single character or an asterisk to replace zero or many characters. So for example, you see a search that is was question mark o date asterisk, and you see examples of data that I will get back. And as you see, the question mark can replace the I, the O, the E in the different examples. So wasio, waso, waseo, and the asterisk in data can bring many strings of characters back. So it could be just one, data, or asset, data set, or data sets. Yes, and now Anna will present some other resources and features of the portal.
Yes, because we have many other resources as well, apart from the data sets themselves. So I will present some tools that may be of use to you. The first one that I wanted to highlight was our licensing assistant, because the data sets may have different licenses that mean you have to do certain things with them, like name the author or so on. You have certain permissions, certain prohibitions, and it can get a little bit confusing if you don't know what a license means. So for that reason, we have created this licensing assistant that you can also access through the QR code on the slide. And what it means is that we have a list of 177 licenses with all of these explanations of what you can do with the data set and what you can't do. And then another feature that I personally really like is what you can also see in the screenshot. Namely, we've taken the most commonly used licenses and we've put them in a little table for you with the most important characteristics that they have in different colors in order to make it really easy and quick to see what you have to do for this data set and what you are not allowed to do. Another tool that I wanted to highlight is our API endpoint. An API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it is basically an access method. So it means that you can use it to request data with certain filters or parameters applied. So you could look for data from a specific region, a specific period, whatever is most useful. And what makes an API so special is that the data is retrieved automatically and therefore also updated automatically. So for example, if you want to use a certain data set on your website or in an app, you want this data set to be continually updated to make sure it is the most current version. And for that reason, an API might be the perfect fit for that because it will do that without you having to check it over and over again. Another thing that we offer is our Sparkle endpoint. I'm not going to go into too much detail there because I know you will speak about this later in a lot more detail. But basically, this is a querying language that you can use to look through our portal, because a lot of the metadata is stored in RDF triples, which have the subject, predicate, object that makes it easy to use the querying language to look for specific data sets. So here I have a screenshot of what our Sparkle endpoint looks like, and it might be at first glance a little bit daunting because it looks like there's code and so on, but really this is quite easy to use because we also have several sample Sparkle queries that you can access to the endpoint, and you can just adapt those to whatever you're looking for, and this will make it very easy for you to find a list of all the data sets that fulfill the certain filters that you're setting and fulfill these conditions that you put in the Sparkle search. So now I will give the word back to Nick to speak about our Data Europa Academy.
Yes, and I will do so very quickly because we don't have a lot of time. Basically, what I want you to know is that we don't only publish data in the European Data Portal, we offer parallel activities, and among those is the effort to educate the society and the workforce and everybody who wants to increase their literacy, data literacy. And we offer, among many other things, like a data visualization guide and so on and so forth. One of the most successful services we have is the Data Europa Academy. So basically, you can find courses there, many lessons, e-learning modules, and get certifications where people can add them in their CVs. But most importantly, understand what we're talking about, many different aspects of data, legal aspects of data, and so on. So this is something that you can promote within your organizations and enterprises. Yes, so among this effort, you can find webinars for nearly every data-related issue and interest you may have. These are just a few examples. Learning path, so you can make a structured path with specific courses that, as I said, give you then certifications as the ones that you see on the right-hand side. And another feature I would like to briefly mention here, so you're among the first to hear about it, is the competition platform. We're trying to increase reuse of this wealth of open data. We organized competitions called Datathon in the past, where people created actual applications that are based on open data. And there are businesses nowadays that have a successful service that is based on a free resource, open data. So we don't organize datathons anymore, but we are launching the competition platform where, based on a particular theme, people and teams can compete against other data enthusiasts from all over Europe. So you can subscribe in the newsletter of the European Data Portal and hear about it when it comes. It's going to be quite soon, is my understanding. And yes, with that now, it's the last part of the presentation about public procurement resources on the European Data Portal, and Hannah will speak about this.
Yes, because we figured that this might be what you would be most interested in. We do actually have quite a few different things that might be of help to you here. The first one I wanted to highlight is this page here that you can also access through the QR code, which is mostly about the public procurement data space, and you can get access to it there. However, we also have some other resources that we link to on this page, so it is really handy to keep in mind because you have all these links in one place. So other things you can access here are, for example, all the TED procurement data and especially also the API that TED has, for example, and features like this. And then another thing we offer on this website is we have a section on standards for public procurement data. So there are some resources to ensure the interoperability of and reusability as well of public procurement data. So make sure to check this page out. And then there were also two data sets that I wanted to highlight. The first one is this one about public procurement data from 2006 to 2023. This is a data set that was maintained by DG Grow during this time. However, nowadays it has been replaced by the public procurement data space. So if you're looking for more recent data, that would be the place to go. However, if you're looking to have a temporal kind of long-term study, this data set might be ideal for that because it offers, I think there are 48 distributions in this data set, and it really has data from all of these years that is accessible in CSV format. So it's very easy to work with it. And then the final data set I wanted to highlight was this one, which is about TED data itself. So here you can basically find all of the data you also find on TED in one place, easy to download. So make sure to keep that in mind as well. And then finally, I also wanted to do a quick hands-on demonstration for you to show you how you can look for public procurement data on our portal. For this, I will have to stop the screen sharing for a second to then switch to my browser. So please bear with me. Here we go. I hope you can see my browser now. Perfect. So as you can see here, I'm in our quick search function, very easy to find. And we have almost 2 million data sets for you to choose from. If you're looking for public procurement specific data, the most obvious thing would be to start by typing public procurement into our search function as a keyword. And that will give you 600,000 data sets, which is a very good number. And you can really see that this is data not just from the European Union, but from all the member states. You have a few EU ones, but then also here Lithuanian data, Slovakian data, Croatian data. And so, for example, let's say you're interested in this French data. You can look at this BOAM, the official bulletin of public procurement announcements. And then you have all of these different options. You can download it in different formats and different versions, whatever you're most interested in. And sorry, that was wrong. Okay. And here you can just simply download all of that. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. And then there was another quick trick that I wanted to show you. Namely, if you start here with the TED dataset that I showed you earlier, the EU itself, the EU institutions, usually apply a lot of Eurovoc. These are specific vocabulary that make it easier to find certain data sets because they are saved in the metadata. And these are the ones here. And one thing you can do with these is include them in, for example, a Sparkle search to make sure you get all of the European Union data. But another neat trick is to just click on one of them. For example, this one that just says public procurement. And this will take you to a list of 11 data sets where almost all of them, apart from the Italian one here, are EU data sets about public procurement. So it is a really easy way to find all of the EU-based data sets about public procurement. So I hope this little trick will be useful for you. And now I will stop sharing and we can go back to the presentation, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have for us.
Thank you very much, Hannah and Nick, for this outstanding presentation on the data portal. I would encourage now participants to ask questions, so you can drop those questions directly in Slido right now. Of course, those of you who feel that they could intervene even by opening up their microphone and camera are welcome to do so. So I will be checking now the Slido just to see if we have anything, while at the same time keeping here an eye to see if people would like to intervene live. So let's see what we have. So far, I don't see any questions about the...
Meanwhile, we want to thank you. We hope we didn't tire the audience too much. It was a bit intense presentation for a first one. We're very thankful that you invited us here to present this valuable resource for businesses and general organizations. And it's been an honor to open the presentations today. And we hope people will leave with a few key takeaways that will be really useful for their day-to-day work. Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you very much to the both of you. And you know, maybe people need time for things to think. And if questions show up later on, we will not hesitate to reach out to you guys so that you can help us answer them.
That would be great. And we keep hoping that we explain everything so clearly that there is no need for questions.
Definitely, it was very clear. That I can vouch for. And then we see what happens. Okay, so if I don't see questions, I will double check once more just to be on the safe side. I don't see anything. Cindy, you correct me if I'm wrong. But in that case, what I would do is for now, I would move on to the next presentation. And as I said, there's always the possibility for you to ask the questions later on, and then we will reach out to the colleagues. So I will welcome now my colleague Carl Ferrand, who will be speaking about the eForms plans. Carl, if you are there, and you are there.
Hi, nice to be here, and I'm glad to meet reusers of the data. So my name is Carl Ferrand. So my team in the TED unit at the publications office is more concerned about the reception, the validation, and the production of the content. So we work a lot with our colleagues in Brussels on the policy of eForms, the content of the notices, which then appear on TED and you consume as reusers. So it's quite a lot of teamwork to get the information in the first place and get it out so that it can be published in the official journal and reused and exploited by many of you, which is the whole point of what we're doing, to get the information out. So we're very pleased to support you as we can. So today I'm just going to give you an idea of where we are with eForms. Some of you who might have been eSenders, so the organizations that provide the bulk of our data, will recognize some of these slides that I presented a couple of months ago to eSenders. So eSenders are national or commercial providers who work with the buyers, who fill in the notices that we validate and publish. And the SDK is a software development kit, which is basically the technical specifications of eForms. And eForms is the data that is defined in a regulation, the eForms regulation from 2019, which defines which data is mandatory or optional, is included in each type of notice. Well, that's a short version. I think most of you are aware of the concepts of the SDK. Each SDK version has its own rules, its own schema, code list, labels, and translations. And as we improve or increment or add information, we release a new SDK version. Multiple SDK versions can exist at the same time, and the eSenders upgrade according to their capacity and their planning, or if they need the new functions, the new options, they upgrade sooner to make use of the new fields or the new forms. So this is a quick overview of the current SDKs, which are valid at the moment, where we accept for publication, and they're still being published in TED. So SDK 1.12 is going to end in a few months' time. Most descenders are moving off it. The most popular one is SDK 1.13 right now. And why is it popular? It's because it's the one aligned with the latest amendment of the eForms regulation. So that amendment added 6 new forms. That's probably the biggest change that you will have noticed in the XML you're consuming. They're called E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, E for extended, a bit confusing. But these are forms which are not mandatory under the 2014 directives for public procurement. So these were added because in certain countries or for additional transparency, buyers may choose to publish them. Often they're encouraged to be more transparent, and in some countries that the culture is for more transparency. So we added these forms to make it possible. So, for example, E1 is a form for a prior market consultation. It's a bit similar to some of the planning notices, but allows a buyer to say, I'm going to do something, and it wants to assess if the market can respond to a future procurement. E2, E3, E4, voluntary planning, competition, and result notices, primarily used for below threshold notices. So if a buyer wants to publish a competition which is not subject to the EU directives, they can still publish it on TED. And E5 is an interesting one. It's a contract completion, which is where the buyers are encouraged to publish what happened at the end of the contract. So maybe 4 or 5 years later, what was actually consumed out of that contract. So you can have a result. It says I have a contract for 5 million, but 5 years later, you can say how much was actually consumed out of it. It also included a couple of other secondary legislations for International Procurement Instrument, Energy Efficiency Directive, which is still being transposed to make that information available, but they're not used massively. And I think most of you, this is more for policy reasons. So SDK 1.14 that came out a few months ago. That was an incremental one. Right now we're working on SDK 1.15, which should be out quite soon. These are what we call maintenance releases. There's no legal pressure to do it, but based on the same second amendment, we might improve some rules, we might update the code lists. So what we call maintenance releases, they're incremental ones. So from your point of view as a reuser, the main interest is there's no change to the XML schema. So if you see the XML for 1.13, 1.14, 1.15, it'll look the same. So you can process it in the same way with no huge surprises. And ideally, you might see some incremental data quality improvements as we tighten some rules and improve what is provided. So that's the main change. And I'll briefly present today what is planned in the next SDKs. The main one is what we call undisclosed, unpublished fields, and SDK 2, which I'll come to in a second. What happens after these SDKs? So I'll show at the end, but there might be a third eForms amendment. Well, there will be very likely a third eForms amendment, which would change the legal basis, change the fields we have. There's some plans to maybe simplify a few aspects, but right now not much work has been done on that because at least our colleagues in Brussels, and we're supporting them, the big attention is on a new Public Procurement Act, which we'll see at the end. So anything to do with that eForms amendment would probably come in 2027 later on. So that's 27 plans. We'll be seeing you before that happens. Okay, so I wanted to present the concept of what has until now been unpublished fields. You might have noticed in the regulation, in the terminology, in the fields, the information we have, there are lots of different words to call this: unpublished, not immediately published, published later, privacy, confidential, hidden. what this process is that there's certain fields that buyers are allowed to not make public. So they can publish the notice, but some of the information is not revealed, is not disclosed. So we worked a bit on the terminology, and we found that disclosure, non-disclosure, undisclosed, and withholding information are the words which are most appropriate to cover different reasons for not publishing. So it could be you're protecting commercial interest, there might be personal information. So in the directives, there are a few reasons why you can withhold information and not disclose it. So there's a terminology change that we want to push through so that we have consistency, so it's clear that it's the same for everyone. And you'll have noticed in the data, currently there's a very, very granular possibility to withhold information. So for every single field that a buyer does not want to publish, they have to declare why they're not publishing that field. And optionally, they can add a description for not publishing, and also have a date at which the information will be published in the future. This is all well and good if you want to withhold individual fields, but in practice, normally the buyer wants to withhold the same field across the notice. So the proposal we are coming up with is to have those 4 fields which are at field level would be available once for the entire notice. So there would be only one reason not to disclose information, only one description, and only one potentially future date. If there's no date, it means the information is never disclosed. If there is a disclosure date, it means this will be, the information will be published again. It could be up to 5 years later, and the information is revealed, it's disclosed at that moment. But most buyers choose to never publish it. To describe which fields will not be disclosed, will be withheld, we've chosen to provide groups of fields. So we'll see on the next slide. If you want to withhold the award criteria, there's like 10 fields related to award criteria. You will choose to withhold all the award criteria. You only have to say once. This makes it easier for the buyer to say, don't publish the award criteria. And they only do it once. The award criteria for every lot would then be withheld this way. This allows us to clean up like 500 fields. There's a lot of repetition and only have 4 fields. So the XML is going to be much more compact. That's the plan. And it makes it easier for the buyers to withhold the information. One reason to make it easier to withhold information, it's not great for users, but because it's hard to withhold the information, the buyers end up putting nonsense values in the data. So and instead of putting a real value, they might put a value of 10 or 1 or 9999. They put nonsense values, which is useless. If you know at least that the information is not withheld, at least you know how to handle it. If it's a nonsense value of 1, that will be even more confusing. These slides are available, will be available online, so you can see the details, and this is a proposal we're coming up with. You'll see there's like a dozen groups that you can hide. In some cases, the group is only one value, so there's still some granularity, and sometimes the groups have things that go together. So you're talking about subcontracting, all the subcontracting information is withheld. But you'll see like notice value, which is a popular one to hide. So we don't actually want to tell you how much the result was. All this information is only in the results. So there's no withholding competition information. So if you're announcing a call for tenders, all the information's there. It's only at the result where this is possible. And there's one particular group of fields, which is, this is new. So what I've mentioned before, it's already possible to withhold the information field by field, and we're just changing the technique for doing it. I'll just go back up again, because in fact, what happens is the fields are always available, but we mask the values. So you would have seen already in the data you get, if there's an amount field, and it's going to be, well, currently what we call unpublished, in future will be undisclosed. We replace the real value with a -1. So that's our convention for saying -1 means this is a masked value. And then that would be linked to the reason why it is masked. And if it's free text information, we will replace it with a value unpublished. It's in the XML, you will see that value. You know how to respond to it correctly. So all these fields could be unpublished today. So we're just changing the technique. In the XML, it will look the same to you. So if the notice value is, if you see a -1 today, in the future, you'll still see -1. But we want to make it a bit easier for the buyers and reduce how the XML stores that information. But the values themselves will look the same to you. What is new, and this is a request we've had since we started with eForms, is often the buyer wants to withhold the information about the winner, tendering organization generally, but especially the winner, because it can be quite sensitive, especially in defense. If there's an individual, if an individual person is the winner of a contract, you might not want to disclose that information. So we plan to have a very simple solution, is that if the buyer says, don't publish any information about any tendering information, any tendering organization. This means if the organization is a winner, which is mandatory, it's also possible for buyers to publish non-winning tenderers. And if they do, they can also withhold that information. So these are all the fields that are affected. From an XML point of view, it's whatever is linked to a tendering party. All the XML below that is hidden. All the information you might have about tendering organizations. You might notice that you will start getting unpublished winner information. This is not great for transparency, but there are good reasons to not publish information. And the benefit is you will actually know it's deliberately unpublished rather than people just put an XXX. I should look it up myself, but I have heard that the company XXX is the third biggest winner of public procurement in Germany. So people are just putting XXX to put nonsense data in. But we want to make it a bit more clear what's going on. So that we plan to do in SDK 1.16. For those of you senders, this is a change of plans to what we announced a couple of months ago, and we'll clarify the sequence of events. SDK 2 for reusers, the changes, there should be no impact on you because the XML is the same. What it means for us in terms of rules is we will be able to have more sophisticated rules. EFX is the eForms expression language, which we use for the rules, and will allow us to have dynamic rules, which means we can compare data between notices. Today, the rules only apply in the notice itself. Is it consistent? And now we'll be able to compare across notices. So, for example, when there's a change notice, we will check the notices that's been changed, and we'll make some basic checks to say that at least a handful of fields are the same. Often buyers might make a mistake, they might link to the wrong one, and then it's nonsensical because you get the new notice, this is I'm changing that one, when the one before, they link to the wrong one. A similar one for if you're doing a contract modification notice, what are you changing, the one before? And also try to make sure that the result notice is linked to the right competition notice. So that also can be a mistake. So it's pretty basic, but we want to avoid some obvious mistakes, which will improve the data down the line. And when you're trying to link things together, it makes sense to you. Yes, and then there's a control for dispatch dates that controls us. That's of interest to us at reception. We don't care about those, but we want to improve data quality between notices. So when SDK comes in. But you have to notice, like I said on the first slide, is that the old SDKs are still valid for a while. So SDK 1.13 and later will be valid until the end of next year. Any data or issues in SDK 1.13 will still be there until the end of next year. So you have to be patient as the e-senders and the buyers move out of SDK versions as we close gaps in data quality. Okay, I'll try and finish my last slide. Just jumping ahead. I guess many of you might be aware that that the European Commission has the intention to revise the public procurement legislation, ideally before the end of the current Commission. So by 2029, 2030, it should all be wrapped up. And there should be something before that. You might have seen these slides in other contexts, but what they're doing now is to, there's been an evaluation report. There was an open public consultation you might have seen. And right now our colleagues in Brussels are very busy finishing the impact assessment and to publish a proposal for a new Public Procurement Act. This would replace 3 directives from 2014. The sector, the utilities one, concessions, and the general directives. The Defence Directive, which is a 2019 directive, 2009 directive, is also being revised in parallel, but they should align with the general one that's coming. In general, the general approach is to try to simplify the process. Also, there are some more political aspects about buying European. And to have a digital marketplace of information. So there should be a move to having more accessible data, richer data, more standardized data. So down the line, we're hoping that reusers like yourselves should be able to benefit from a better data ecosystem and more information. But right now, yeah, it's still all being discussed. It'll get published bit by bit. And in timing, it'll be 2028, 29. So it's not for immediate time, but there'll be transition time. There'll be plenty of time to adapt. So just to let you know, this is ongoing. And we're trying to help our colleagues to keep things simple, because the data today is quite heavy. Okay, that's it for me. If you have any questions, please get in touch. And I think we might have time for a break. Thank you.
So I hope you've had a nice break, that you can still hear me. And I also hope that the colleagues that need to intervene are ready. And in that case, I would give the floor to my colleague, Ioannis.
Yes.
No problem.
So I want to talk to you about this website that we have, the Data Europa EU, which is the public-facing website for the Open Data Service, which we recently updated. And for some context, as I start, I want to remind everybody what we do. So as you know that we collect notices using eForms, publish them on the TED website as notices, and then using the procurement ontology, which is a standard that we also have developed in parallel with eForms, but for dissemination of data, we extract the data that are on those notices that we collect and publish them in the Open Data Service as open data. The way that we do that is basically through a data extraction pipeline that uses all these technologies that we have put together in order to create a knowledge graph of all the data that we accumulate through time on public procurement. And all this data is published as a knowledge graph in the Open Data Form. So therefore, the Open Data Service is a place where a knowledge graph of public procurement information is found. One thing that is important to understand here, in order for your expectations to be aligned with our efforts, is that the Open Data Service, the goal of the Open Data Service is not to
to serve directly the end user being the person that will actually make use of the information or extract information from the data, the person that has the questions needed to make decisions, the person that needs to look at the analysis, etc. Of course, that person can also use the Open Data Service, but that's not the person that we're targeting directly. We're targeting the user. And who is the user? The user is a person that takes the data from us, uses it to create their own application and provide their own services to the end user. So if you go to the Open Data Service and expect to find dashboards or ready questions, answers to any question that you might want to ask, presented as an answer, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you are a user that is looking for data to provide the service, then we hope that you're going to be happy with what we're trying to provide for you. So as a user, of course, your goal is to be able to get our data into your applications, into your information systems. And basically, the key to get this data is just a URL, because this data is residing behind an API endpoint. So your entire query, which specifies what exactly part of the knowledge graph you're interested in order to solve a specific need, is encoded inside a URL. And that's the kind of a holy grail, what you're looking for. You're looking for that URL that can feed your application with data. Now, in order to create that URL, of course, to get that URL, which we provide to you through this Open Data website, you will need a query that will select the data that you want. So the basic problem that we have to help you with, as we see it now at this point in time, is we need to find ways to help you write that query. Because unfortunately, that query is written in a language that not everybody is familiar with. Sparkle, you heard about this language, similar to SQL, but not really similar to SQL. And although we are in a kind of lucky period of time where we have LLMs and LLMs can help us write Sparkle, you still have to understand what you're doing, and you still have to have a rough knowledge of how the query works and what the data looks like. So in order for us to be able to help you write your query and get your URL so that your application can function and you can provide your service, we went and did an update in our TED, data TED Europa EU website. So this is a public-facing website that sits in front of our API, and the purpose of it is to help you get that URL and get our data into your application. And the site tries to, of course, get the URL by helping you write your query, helping you understand our knowledge graph, so how a notice is represented as a knowledge graph, and providing the tools that you need in order to get there. So we have a query editor, a Sparkle query editor that is a not complete feature. So if you type different terms, it gives you the appropriate ontology term so that your queries, you can type your queries more easily. We give you customizable query examples so that you can modify them. You might find something that is close to what you're thinking of. You may change it, tweak it. We show you the results of the queries. And of course, we give you that URL, which you're going to get and get live data in your application without having to come back to our site. And another thing that Andrea will show you in a minute is we also give you a view of what a notice looks like as a knowledge graph. and you can pick any notice that is published on TED. You enter its publication number, and then you can look inside the notice as a knowledge graph. So our goal in this presentation now is to show this to you as a demo. And at this point, I will hand over the mic and the screen to my colleague Andrea Passare, who is going to show you notices and knowledge. Andrea.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. One moment so I can share my screen. Share. Good. Okay. Can you see something? It should be just the TED Open Data website. Perfect.
You can see it.
Thanks. So, hello everyone again. As Yanis already mentioned, I will try today to show you something slightly different from the usual way the procurement data is presented. Normally, when you think about procurement data and our procurement notices, you think about documents like in the form of PDF, XML files, forms, or web pages, and so on. These are really useful for publication, but it becomes often difficult to explore the actual data behind the notices. It's difficult to analyze it and difficult to reuse. So what I will demonstrate you today is that by using how we call it, an instance of a notice class, you can change that experience entirely. So rather than see the procurement information as a document, we can represent it as a connected graph, a knowledge graph, graph of information, and most importantly, we can visualize this graph in a very intuitive way, and you will see it using this inspect tool that I'm just clicking here. Right now, as you can see here, you can put your own notice number and you can try to search it, but yeah, normally I would really take the opportunity to take a risk, and I will just pick a random notice from here. And bear in mind that the objective of today is not to teach you RDF or ontologies. It's just to show you how procurement data can become easier to understand, to navigate, and ultimately to reuse that. So let's see what notice we have now. We have the notice 389873, year 2025. We can see here some information about it. It has 932 triples. I will start by showing you that we are under the tree visualization, the one that I will focus on today, but you also have the option to go to the turtle one. I will click on it so you can see. Here you can see the actual turtle file behind this notice, which is based, of course, on the procurement ontology. And you have everything here. Good. I will go back to the...
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
I think that your resolution is too high for this. Maybe we can zoom somehow. I don't know if zooming the page is a good idea, but well, yeah, okay, kind of better.
Apparently the tool is good enough, and it lets me to zoom the page.
Kind of better, yes. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, good. Thanks. So I will go back to the tree visualization now, so we can have a look at what we have there. Good. The next thing we can see that we have the procedure timeline section, which is basically how a procedure unfolds in time, starting from one notice. Here is for example, a modification notice, and then we might have some other notices that follow up, and they are linked through refers to previous relationship from using the procurement ontology. Now we are on this highlighted notice, as we can see here. It's a contract award notice modification, so result notice, a modification for result notice. It's based on the eForms SDK 1.13 from 17 June 2025, and the country is Spain. Now we will go and explore what we have inside the notice itself. We will see some, they're already unfolded here, but I will try to bring them on. you will see that we have some nodes that are related to this notice itself, to this graph of the notice. We have the notice itself. We will start with this one. This is the, let's say, the entry point into our procurement process at the moment. Instead of having this long document and you're scrolling through pages and pages of information to try to find a particular concepts and links that you want, we can simply expand these notice step by step. And for example, here inside the notice, we can see that we have some attributes of the notices. For example, the publication date, what type of notice is. It's a subtype of 38, contract modification notice. And also we have links to other concepts that we have in this notice. For example, the lots. This notice refers to multiple lots. It refers to a previous notice, as we can see here, and we can open this and we can see to what notice. It's basically the notice with this particular identifier. And in this case is this publication ID 340983. And of course, it refers to the procedure. It has some other different properties like metadata of the notice. And it refers to multiple roles like tenderers and buyer. We should have the buyer here as well, reviewer, procurement procedure information provider. And because we're in the contract award notice, we have some information about the award decision based on each contract and of course the lots that are inside the contracts. Good. And then we will see that we go into the actual contracts that we have here. We have the title of the contract. We can see the reference of the lot. And we go inside to the lot 1, which of course this lot 1, it's the one that was referenced above here inside the notice. This is lot 2, but I'm pretty sure we have one here. Yes, it's here. Good. And we can see that we have a title of the lot, the description. If we have some specific contract terms, if we click, we can see what type of contract terms. For example, this one has a specific place of performance. The contract nature type, it's supplies, and it's not, we don't have e-ordering, no e-payment, is e-invoicing required, and so on. Let me see if we have, and for example, for the role, I will go under the buyer, so you can see how the actual graphs looks like for a role that we have. It's the type of a buyer, and a role is always played by an organization. And here is where we have all the information about that particular organization. It has a legal name. We have a contact point. It's the primary contact point with the email, telephone, internet address, and so on. The registered address of that organization with a NUTS code, country code. These come from the code list that you know well, and the legal identifier of it. And this is the internal identifier that we have for the organization within this notice, which is org 003. One more particular aspect that I will say is that you will see that we have this, let's say, so these are like relationships. And if we hover over, we will see that it goes directly, it provides the URI of the property from the e-procurement ontology. And here we have the URI of the actual resource of the instantiations of that particular property. For this one is the organization identifier. So that's how you can navigate through this knowledge graph. Like now, the biggest advantage, of course, of this type of visualization is that it makes all this complexity manageable. You can go and look exactly at what triple you want to see the information that you want. We have many actors, many stages, a lot of terms on a notice, and it will be easy if you want to understand one particular lot. You just expand the lot, that particular lot section, and you look into it, and you have the information there. Again, you also have you have the relationships, and you can see them. We also provide a glossary for these properties, but is on the e-procurement ontology documentation website. I think we can put that in one of our slides in the presentation if needed. So you can if you don't understand one particular property, what it means, you can go there and you can look at the glossary and it's explained, and you'll come back and you can look further into the notice.
Yeah, actually, again, interruption, sorry,
Yeah.
interactive. We plan to add to link the glossary to this website so that you can have direct access on that information. Yeah.
It's a really good idea. Again, another important benefit here is, of course, the interoperability, because all the notices follow the same e-procurement ontology structure. So users start to recognize the patterns and across the notices, the countries and systems, and so on. So the visualization helps make that consistency visible between different platforms and across borders. And of course, the information now is not longer trapped inside the document. It is structured, it is connected, and it is reusable for dashboarding, analytics, and so on. So this visualization acts as a bridge between the semantic model that we have, which may become.
Everybody is now familiar with the TED website, and from the TED website to go to the Open Data Service website, you just have to add data as the prefix before the TED, and then we go to the Open Data Service. In Open Data Service, what I'll be focusing now is on the Explore tab. And in the Explore tab, we have the query library. In the query library, we have around 35, I think it's visible. If I want, I can make it a little bigger. And we have around 35 sample queries, which are grouped into 7 categories. With these queries, you can use these as building blocks to build your own queries. So I will show a couple of queries live demo, and I hope it will work. If not, we also have a recording so which I can show, but I'm sure it will work. And some of you who are familiar with this have seen the first 5 categories of the query library, starting from notices to the advanced queries. The first 5 categories provide transactional data, so notice level information, so providing specific notice information starting from the publication number and so on. So we will not go into the transactional part, we'll directly go to the analytics part, which is captured in the stats category. So the stats category contains around 19 queries. These queries are providing aggregated information, so no notice specific information, but you can also write filters to get specific information. And from here, as Yanis was mentioning, you can generate a link and use it into your application. So let's do a couple of queries, starting from information about number of notices published for a date range. So for those of whom this query looks like overwhelming, don't have to bother about this query at the moment. Just go through the description, and it says it provides the count or the number of notices per publication date for a date range. So you just have to go through this description, forget the query, and then try this query. And now you have the results for a number of publication dates. What's the number of total number of notice counts for each day? Going back to the Explore tab, like this, we have many queries starting from here, and publication date statistics. When was the first published date, last published date, how many dates in between the publishing dates, total number of total notice counts, what's the total number of notices that we have on the system, notice count per form type. So let's try this one. I'm selecting those queries that will run in few seconds instead of taking those queries that will take maybe half a minute. So for a demo, I don't want to try those. Let me run this query. So here we have the notice count per form type. And you can see we have the competition results and so on. Now going back to the Explore tab. Similarly, we have queries that provide per date and notice type, per date and procedure type, Another interesting one is if you're interested in finding the notice that has the highest estimated procedure amount, you can try this query and it'll provide you for a particular range. So in this case, the default selection is 2025 December 1st until 7th. So let's try this query. It'll come in a couple of seconds. That is a little bit longer than usual, but the query still works, and we can come back to this again. So now we have the other queries related to notice count per buyer. So how many notices per buyer? Joint procurement count. So how many procurements are jointly procured? Then we have top buyers by notice count and number of buyers per month, number of tenderers per month. And this is all for a specific duration that's been provided in the query. Similarly, we have the winner count per contract conclusion month and notice count per month per year, top buyer countries by notice count, top winners by contract count, and SME tenders per date. So last one is the contract count per currency. What you notice here is we don't have, for example, top buyers by the amount. That's one of the limitations as of now, because we don't have the all the notices in common currency as euro. So it's an original currency and we cannot compare across notices. So we don't have a query yet that provides like the top buyers by the amount or the top winners by amount. Now I'll show you the same query that didn't run last time. Probably it runs now, and then I'll show you how we can customize this. Okay, now it runs. So it provided the top one for a particular date. So how to customize this? Go back to the same notice, click on customize. You can, for example, change the dates range. I'll select first month of 2026, and let's say instead of the top one, I want top 10. So I'll limit it to top 10. Run the query, and we have the results. And here, there are multiple options in terms of how you can download this, starting from JSON, CSV, TSV, spreadsheet, XML. These are the options to download this data. Now, the next point is what Yanis mentioned. You can copy the endpoint URL by clicking on this, and you can use this in your own application. It could be an Excel file, it could be Jupyter Notebook, or Power BI, or any other application. So now I'll just show a demo of how you can use this in Jupyter Notebook. So here I had the query previously captured for a single day. So let's cancel this out. That's a long query. And paste the query that was copied from that endpoint. Here, because I want to deal with CSV file, the CSV format, and not JSON format, I will just change the format from the query to CSV. And now I should be able to run this. And we have the data here. So the benefit of this particular application is that you can generate an URL and use it in your own application. And imagine if this is changed to fetch the last 7 days or the last 10 days or the last month. Then you always, when run this query, you always get the last 10 days or last month that you're interested in. You can also write the entire query in for example, in Jupyter Notebook, you can copy any of the queries from the Explore tab or write your own query. For example, go to Explore tab and click on the copy button, and then you have the query copied. For here, I've done it earlier. So I've copied one of the queries, which is notices per month query. And I've already run it so that we don't have to do it during demo. So in the application, you can see the results. And then just like any other data, you can also visualize it in your application. For example, here I've visualized it per month, and you don't have to actually come back to this page to try your queries. You can do it from your own application. Now I'll step to the last category that we have, which is federated queries. This might take a few seconds, so I'll already run this when I explain this query. So this particular query is querying data both from Open Data Service, and it is also querying data from Wikidata. This is why it's called federated, because it's combining the data from Open Data Service and Wikidata Service based on by a country. So this is just to show an example that you can combine data that is not even residing in TED Open Data Service and get the results. So here we are considering the bringing the population data of the buyer country and seeing how many notices are there per million population of that buyer country. So from the TED data, it brings the information related to the buyer country, the notice count, and from Wikidata, the population. And then we are dividing it by a million to get the data about per million. And because it's bringing it from both these services, it takes maybe a minute. And now we have the data here. So you have the buyer country, notice count, population, and number of notices per million. And with this, you can do some interesting check. For example, Bulgaria has highest number of, I think it's Latvia, 428, and so on. So in this way, you can check the number of notices per country, compare it with the population, and so on. And as I mentioned, this is just one example of how you can use federated query approach. Apart from this, you can write your own queries in a very simple way. So let's clear out everything that's here. We have some cool features. For example, you don't have to remember the prefixes. If you just start typing prefixes, all the standard prefixes comes in, so you don't have to remember these prefixes. And then you can start writing your own queries. And that's where what Andrea mentioned about the inspect tab comes into picture. So you can go back to the inspect tab, click any of the notices and check what are the relationships that are there. And then based on that, you can form your query. So this would help me in making my own query. So just to start, let's get rid of this one. A very simple query for you to understand that it's not that difficult. And we have auto recommendation, so we can also make use of this. In this case, let's say I want the notice and the publication number. And because we have loaded the triples in a graph, we need the graph. And let's make a simple one. So notice of type notice, and it has a publication number. And this is where it helps to go back and check in the inspect tab that we have such a property. So what's missing? And if the query is missing something, then we have the run query disabled. So, okay, I have the missing G here. What else is missing? You have an extra.
This,
Yanis, did you say something?
yeah, your parentheses are not matching.
No, it's the semicolon at the end of this.
Also,
Yeah, I missed this
yeah.
semicolon here because
Yes.
this is a continuation of this. And now you can see the run queries. That's really a live demo where we can show that disabled button is disabled when the query is not fully correct. And because we don't want to bring a lot of data, so let's limit it by a number of maybe 10 and run the query. So now we have the publication number and so on. And in this way, you can customize the query and also limit the data by, you have seen the building blocks, like how you can use the publication date to select a particular date range, and then you can bring the data related to that. So this is for those who don't want to deal with the complexity of extracting the XML files, unpackaging it, and reading specific data. Instead of that, directly diving into the data and answering the questions that they would have. So it would really help those data analysts, also those who have a one-off use case and they don't want to set up a whole system on their own, but to use what is already there, it'll help them. With that, I will now pass it back to Yanis for the roadmap and the future plans. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Anup. Well done, both Andrea and Anup. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen again. So, quick recap of what you just saw. Data.ted.europa.eu is the URL of the site. So we prefix it with data, the known TED URL, data.ted.europa.eu. When you come here, you will get a quick intro of what the site can do, and you just saw the process demonstrated by Andrea and Anup. There is, everywhere you go, you find this button that gives you a quick tour, so that you know what to click and what to do. And what else? A nice important thing is if you have a query which you customize or you run, like this one, for example, and you want to run it to get your data, you can get your endpoint URL here. So this is the URL you're looking for, or you can download your data as a file. This is not going to be live, of course, because you're downloading it. So either you want live data or download it, you can do both. Something similar also applies to notices. So if I take any random notice here, oh, nice. Okay, look a little bit more. You can download the graph or even share this with a colleague. So if you copy paste this link and send it to somebody, they will go directly and inspect this notice. You can go to our help tab to get a quick idea of What you can do here, if you don't remember what we just told you, you can visit our documentation website, which I will open it in a different window to have all the information we have about TED Open Data and how to query them, etc. And basically that's it. We hope you enjoyed. There are a lot of things that we want to improve on this. And we will continue improving it. Another nice thing that I wanted to say about this is you can also search here. So if you have a notice that you opened and you're looking for something particular, I don't know, let's say, I will type something almost random now. You can go and you can use search and it will take you to whatever terms or content you're looking for. So theoretically, this should help you. And you can also get the IRIs and prefixes that you need for your query. So that's the general idea. I hope you will use it, you will like it, and that you will get back to us through our GitHub discussions with feedback or requests for help. And also up here on the right, you can see that the data that are available in the database, you can see the period of the data. So the oldest notice that is published in this dataset and the newest. So I'm closing this and going back to wrap up this presentation. Let me see if this will work. So dataset Europa EU. Now, what is happening going forward? Currently, in the past few months, we tried to reinforce our team, and we're changing our contractor. So there was a kind of bureaucracy and you know, internal housekeeping process that we had to go through. But all this is for the better, and all this is for a stronger presence and ability to evolve and produce better results, better products, and better data. During this year, we are in the process, or we're preparing to update the data content of the Open Data Service. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to refresh our data sets to use the latest e-procurement ontology specification, which is version 5. Currently, the data that are published are based on version 4 for eForms, and for older data are based on version 3 of the ontology. So we're going to unify it so that there is no triple that has different versions of the ontology across the datasets. I'm not sure if this work is going to be finished during before the end of the year, but most likely yes. We're also going to add the eForms data that are not yet supported, which is SDK 14, and we're planning to work also on a system that will allow us to get new eForms specifications quicker, faster into the transformation that we do from XML to knowledge graph. And the pre-eForms period data, we're probably going to tackle them starting next year, so that we have historical data for as far back as we can go. We also care about data quality. And there's two things that we're doing there. I only indicate one here in my roadmap, but there's two things we're doing. So one thing is we have a continuous feedback loop with eForms, and all the data quality issues that we spot on the dissemination side, on the Open Data Service. We try to give them a feedback to our team that manages the rules of eForms, so that future data suffer less from known issues. But also another thing that has to do with an improved ability to query our data is the new system that we're launching this year, and we're currently testing it, which is the Entity Resolution Service. This will be part of the TED Open Data Service. And the goal of the Entity Resolution Service is to be able to figure out from one notice to the other if two appearances of the same entity, of like, let's say, the same organization, might appear with different, with a slightly different name or addresses, and the Entity Resolution Service will use an AI system to make matches and say, okay, this notice and that notice, although the buyer or the seller do not appear exactly the same, they're actually the same entity, and therefore, when we aggregate data, we can combine that data in the aggregation more correctly. The Entity Resolution Service actually is going to be an open source system available on GitHub, and we hope that member states that try to convert the data to the ontology will use it in order to also improve their curability of their own data. Another thing that we are underway of doing, and you already saw it with today's demo, is we're trying to update the user experience. So we will continue improving the Open Data website that we just showed you, with a number of things that we already have in our plans, but also by following your feedback as we go ahead, trying to help you actually use this and get some value out of it. And another thing that is also important for us is to improve the performance of our system. Currently, we're having a heavy transformation process. So it takes us a lot of time to reprocess the data and update them. So we want to improve that so that we can make updates faster. We have a plan on that, but it needs a lot of work. So this is one of the things that we're going to be focusing in the coming months, and we hope that in 1 year from now, we will not have to think about it anymore as an issue. Another part of the performance also problem is, of course, the performance of the queries. You saw Anoop. Some queries might take seconds, but some queries might take minutes. And therefore, we want to work with our colleagues that are managing the triple store that we have, where the actual knowledge graph is stored, and find ways to improve its performance as much as possible, so that live data can be fed to you, to your applications, as fast as possible. So this was the main part of the presentation that we wanted to do for you today. I will add a quick survey just to get some quick picture of how you see all this so far. So please use our Slido link to answer a couple of questions. So, okay, let's see. What is your experience with the TED Open Data Service? Okay, it's nice to see that that you're interested. So everybody's interested. That's good. But I also see that some people have not been happy with it, which is of course reasonable. So if you couldn't get the results you were hoping for, really hope that these new updates are going to help you. And also please reach out to us through the GitHub discussions, and we will be happy to help you. Either by helping you directly or by acting on your feedback. So it's good that I see interest. I'll move on to the next question. This is about our colleagues from the European Data Portal. Just to have an idea of the familiarity of the audience with the Open Data Portal, the European Data Portal. Okay, I see that. Yeah, the audience is half and half. So you use it either occasionally or regularly. That is very nice. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for giving us feedback. And go to our website. Please try to use it. And hopefully you will be able to create some value out of the data that we're trying to provide. Thank you. Laura, back to you.
Thank you very much, Yanis, Andrea, and Anup, for the presentation and demonstrations. Very useful. And I think with this, we have come to the last point on our agenda, which is us answering your questions. And hopefully with the help of the colleagues, we'll be able to answer all the questions. Last time I checked, and I will check it again now, we have 14 questions, if I'm not mistaken. So will you show the questions, Cindy, so that we can move through them one by one? Okay, so let's see what we have here. Yeah, so I guess this is the first question. So matching publications or related notices. We use notice publication ID, in brackets notice number, contract folder ID, procedure identifier, notice document reference, previous notice. This sometimes links two sets of related notices. Is that correct? I think there was a colleague from the team who wanted to answer this question.
Yes, I think Anup can take the mic, please.
Anup?
Yes. From what I see, the logic is correct. However, we have noticed data quality issues where the buyers have used the same procedure identifier to procure totally unrelated items. So there are multiple notices which are not actually related, but because the buyers have used the same procedure identifier, it comes up as a related notice. So this issue exists. It's a known issue as of now. Maybe some colleagues would like to add something more.
Yeah, we're hoping when we have dynamic rules, we'll be able to eliminate some obvious mistakes. but we cannot control for all the links to be correct. So yeah, it's not that simple. But yeah, we're trying to reduce the obvious ones.
Okay, thank you very much for these answers. And we'll move to the next question, which states, or rather asks, oops, now we are seeing something else here, Cindy. There, thank you very much. Is the publication of second stage framework agreement contract awards call-offs optional as based on Article 50 or mandatory under TED? And Carl had something
I can do
there?
that one. That's not mandatory. So on TED, we don't make it mandatory to publish the contracts that are awarded under framework agreements. But we do see that different countries, different buyers have different approaches. So framework agreement data is a little bit messy, I must say. Something that needs to be tidied up with more guidance from the Commission and agreement with the member states on how to publish this information consistently. eForms is not particularly well adapted to it, unfortunately. But we don't make anything mandatory, so you see what you see.
Thank you, Carl. So with this, we'll move to the next question. Can you elaborate on which time of day new notices are published to be retrieved by TED Search API? When can we assume new notices are available? I think this is a question whose answer is available on the TED website. Let me just get the exact place where you would find it. Having a look at the answers here. So you can see it in help, data reuse, release calendar. So that should clarify what is happening. So for the XML daily package, you have a publication at the latest at 9:30, and on the day of the publication. And for the monthly package, what I see here is on the 5th working day of the next month at 9:30 at the latest. So I hope that answers
Hi,
the
Laura,
question.
we don't see your screen. We still
No,
see the Q&A.
Yes, you don't see the screen, but I am just reading out what the information is, and you will get the I can actually, yeah, somebody already put, thank you. I was going to put the link in the
chat.
in the chat. So the link is in the chat right now, and we will also have it with the answers of the questions. So you can see for yourselves the exact timings of the availability of.
So I guess the API would be no later than 9 o'clock.
Yes.
They're indexed by then.
Exactly.
But it might happen earlier. So,
and since we're talking about data availability, although the question is specifically for the TED Search API, as you know, our data is published daily, so it's not published on 1 notice at a time. Therefore, like TED, the TED Open Data Service gets the notices that are published after they are available on TED. So first the notices are available on TED, and then the data is extracted, and it should be available on the next day. If you noticed earlier that I was showing you the period of notices that are available at this point in time in the Open Data Service, you would have noticed that it was 19th of May and today we're the 20th. So we have yesterday's data in the linked Open Data TED Open Data Service data stream.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we answered this question as well, and we can move on to the next one. Can a group of lots have several awards, or can we consider it a single award entity? A single award entity fits into your conceptualization of a lot, which should only have one price. I think Carl wanted to intervene on this one.
Yeah, so even if a lot is part of a group of lots, there's still going to be only one result per lot. So a group of lots can be used maybe for tendering, and there might be some conditions that are the same, but in the end, there's still going to be a winner per lot. Yeah, group of lots is a bit of a messy concept. Luckily, it's not used very often. In some countries, haven't used it at all. And if I have my way, we'll get rid of them in the long term. But in the meantime, they're in the data, yes, so we have to deal with them. But there should be only one result per lot in the end, so that doesn't change.
Thank you, Carl. All right, so the next question, is it intended to have more than one correction of a specific previous notice in an issue of OJS? It's kind of hard to track this down for consumers. Example, and you have a number of notices as an example.
So yeah, it's not intended. So normally a change, if you have a change notice, you only change one published notice. We don't actually have any checks to stop people having multiple changes on the same day, but indeed that example has indeed happened, and it is confusing. You can, for the reader, the consumer, you could assume the latest one is the most valid one. You can see the sequence, but maybe we can have some sort of rule that would say you can only have one change per day. It doesn't really make sense to have two on the same day. Yep.
Thank you. So we take that as feedback, and
yeah, but don't hold your breath. It'll take us a little while to get that in place. But yeah, it's a good. Thanks for the example as well. It's good to see them happen.
Indeed. All right. So the next one goes like this. When a change notice is published, does the XML structure contain the complete, updated, latest ground truth that entirely overrides the previous notice?
Yes, basically the change notice should contain all the latest consolidated information. So as a full notice, you get the full notice again with the latest information.
Pretty straightforward, this one.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So then, if a tender has multiple contract awards and only one receives a change notice, what is the best practice for users to reconcile the latest change notice with the remaining unchanged ones? Getting more complex here.
Yeah, it gets complicated. Yeah, so the buyer could have multiple contract award notices. So if you have a lot, you have different lots that might be awarded on different dates, you might start splitting, the information might come in pieces. Then we depend a bit on the buyer to keep changing the contract award notice in a consistent way. So if you published one lot and then you want to change that lot, you should only change on that one. You'd hope that the tree is built up correctly, but there's nothing to stop them being a bit messy. So we should see if on our side, if there's ways we could control that. You can only change a notice that has been followed in a certain way. So it can happen. It shouldn't happen, but it can happen, yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Why can an estimated value of a procurement be a negative number? This is not plausible, at least, and affects data quality. I'm talking about the current situation, not the one Carl mentioned for future SDKs.
Yeah, estimated value doesn't make any sense, we agree. And we have no idea why the buyer put those values in. So we're going to stop that possibility in the next SDK. It can still happen. We'll share comments. We counted how many cases appeared for each, all these different values that we found negative values in. Luckily, it only happens in a handful of cases. So it's rare, but you'll still have to handle those edge cases when you come across them with the older SDKs. So it does happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, this in general, we have a policy not to change the data that are submitted. On the other hand, it is clear that there is a need to be able to filter out edge cases like that. And the only way to filter this out in the open data service at least is through a little bit of a more elaborate query, or if we clean the data. before we serve them. But currently, we have no plans to clean the data. Our plan is to publish the data that we have, also for the reason that we want to really face the problems of the data that we collect. We're certainly going to do something about this, but not immediately. In the meantime, you will have to use a little bit of more sophisticated query to exclude some things.
Yeah. Yeah, you still have cases where people put a value of 1 in their estimated value, which is also poor data quality, which has been quite widely documented as a problem. And there we can't stop it at all. It's negative is meaningless. We can stop it, but a value of 1 or 10, you can't really tell. So,
Indeed, it's a known data quality issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. To deduplicate utility below threshold tenders, should we rely on the eForms notice subtypes, or can we say that all utility buyer types fall under the utility threshold that described in the directive?
Yeah, not easy. So we have some rules that make sure that the notice subtypes and legal basis are consistent. We don't have any rules to always check the buyer legal type and the legal basis and the subtypes. There's a lot of trust in the buyer getting things right, but as reusers, you have seen that the quality can vary. In principle, if you're doing below threshold notices, you should use those new subtypes, E2, E3, E4. That's what they're designed for, the voluntary forms. But we don't actually control if a buyer might use, what is it? Subtype 17 is utility for competition, and the value might be below the threshold. So you can't actually be sure what they're doing. You just have to be able to play with the numbers if the numbers are below the thresholds. But as the thresholds themselves are a little bit subtle, there's several different types of thresholds. You can't actually be sure. So no, there are no easy answers to be sure about what you're getting there. So ideally, if it's in the right subtype, it's in the right directive, and the buyer should know which directive they use in which subtype. That should be pretty reliable. If it's below threshold, they should be using E2, E3, E4. That's what should be happening.
Thank you, Carl. All right. So the next one, are you planning to enforce the undisclosed fields in the eForms strictly so that contracting authorities are required to assign at least one value, for example, yes or no?
Yeah, so this question David had put in WebEx short version. So for undisclosed fields, or called unpublished until now, it's optional. So and it's actually it's used quite rarely. Not many notices have undisclosed fields. So basically, if there's no undisclosed data in the notice, there's no information in the notice. So there's no reason for non-publication and things like that. So there is no explicit no. And there's no obligation. So if you find it, it's a yes. If you don't find it, it's a no. So the answer, there's no strict enforcement to assign yes or no.
All right. Thank you. So the next one, what is the API rate limit for the open data service? The SparkQL query can provide the data for a specific notice and its lots, buyer, winner, payable amount. I think Yanis maybe, or is somebody else replying?
I don't have the API rate limit, but I can look it up. I don't know if I know.
What exactly? If there are other colleagues who have already prepared to reply to this question.
Yeah, so we will have to get back to you on that. I don't have the answer.
Okay. So who was
for the SparkQL can provide the data for a specific notice. It's like these lots. It can provide the data for a specific notice. You can, well, I mean, what you show earlier in the spec tab that Andrea was showing you, basically it gives you data for a specific notice. Anup, yeah, answer the question.
So I can answer the second part of the question, which is yes, Open Data Service can provide a buyer, winner, and the awarded amount or the tender amount, not necessarily the payable amount, but the tender amount it can provide. The first part, as Yanis said, I don't know about that.
No problem. So
Have you
we
hit
can-
it, Anoop, rate limit, for example? When you
we sometimes don't hear very well, Yanis.
I'm sorry. Okay, so Anoop, have you hit the rate limit when you tested?
No, I haven't, because we query it manually and not automated. So I guess we would hit this limit when we automate it. Yeah.
Okay, we have to get back to you on that. All right.
Anyway, you will get all the answers also in written form at some point published on the event website. So, we will also let you know when that is done, so that you can have a look at all the questions and the answers that were given. All right, so let's move on to the next one. How different are the XML schema between SDK versions? If they are different, are these published somewhere so that we can track them more easily?
So it might be different. The entire point of the SDK is so that the differences between the schema from one, the differences in the schema between SDK versions are not relevant. So, to answer your question concretely, yes, there are differences, usually no difference at all, sometimes small differences, nothing dramatic. The change, for example, that we're going to do now for the undisclosed fields that Carl was describing earlier will be a difference in the schema. However, the whole point of the game to be able to address the XML notices without having to look at the schema. So if you're using the SDK itself in the way that it's supposed to be used, then you wouldn't have to worry about differences in the schema. If you still worry about differences in the schema and you want to look for the schemas like you're asking, you will find the schema applicable to each SDK version. Inside the SDK, there's a schemas folder, and the schema that is applicable for that SDK version is in that folder.
I see that Carl has also published a link, so I suppose it's a link that is
just in case
these changes would be.
Yeah. And there's also
posted to GitHub, so that's where the information is stored.
There is also the SDK Explorer, Carl. What you compare
yes,
the SDK,
I'll post that one too.
Yeah.
Yanis, we still hear you sometimes quite
sorry.
unclearly. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I need to change my microphone situation here. So if you can hear me better now, I just told Carl that there is this SDK Explorer, which is an application that allows us to
put the
compare
link in as well.
differences SDKs, any two SDKs, and so you can see what's changed across.
Good.
So and we've got the release notes we mentioned if there's a schema change, so you can see quite quickly which SDK has it. But indeed, like Anna said, even for example, in the release note for 1.13, I said we added 6 new forms. The schema itself didn't change because it used existing fields with there. So for those forms, but the schema did change because we added some fields for, I think, international procurement instrument. So a schema change, adding 6 new forms. Actually, there was no schema change, and adding a couple of fields for IPI did change the schema. So the impact on you will vary according to what you're looking for. So the schema itself might not be the biggest impact for you.
Yeah, but in general, thinking forward, for the users that have investments on working with the schema directly, keep in mind that maybe it is a better idea to either use the metadata provided in the SDK itself, which across major versions of the SDK is going to be unchanged, and they abstract the changes of the schema, and hide them from you. So either use the SDK as a basis for metadata-driven applications, or of course, even better, consider getting your data through the Open Data Service, so you don't have to look at the XML at all. The systems that we provide to you are not perfect, especially the quality of data in the Open Data Service. We're all aware of the limitations and the difficulties. However, that is where we're investing. We're investing in getting this better, and you should keep it in mind as an option going forward.
Thank you, Yanis. Thank you, Carl. Next question. How long does it take for new notices to appear in TED Open Data Service? As of now, the current notices of today cannot be obtained, and the number of yesterday's notices seems off. You've touched upon this a bit before, Yanis, but I guess you want to comment?
Yeah, we run it overnight, basically, at this point in time. Well, we all know that ideally, one day we should move to publish notices as they come, not as a bunch of 2,000 or a batch of 2,000 or 3,000 notices at the end of the day. But since the notices are published on the daily basis and not on a first come first served basis, then we wait for all the notices to land in the TED website, and then we pick them up from there and transform them. So therefore, this is done overnight. And our goal is to have yesterday notices the next morning available. We'll use it. Yeah, this is not our forever plan. We want to improve on that, but this is our current plan. It's next morning.
Yeah, I don't know about the number of yesterday's notices, but I guess this can be looked
into. If it seems off, okay, let me explain also something else. Okay, so I mentioned when I was talking about the roadmap, I said we want to add SDK 14 notices. This might have raised some eyebrows. So the way that the notices are transformed is we have a transformer that knows, that takes SDK, knows what is in the notices that were created using this SDK, and then makes a transformation. Currently, we just test an SDK before we allow the transformer to transform it. And SDK 14 has not been added to our transformation pipeline. Therefore, yesterday, maybe you had 2,000 notices, out of which 200 were submitted with SDK 14. We're not going to go through the pipeline today. And so that is why you might find differences. Or there are some notices that have a problem in the transformation. You might, for example, realize that a particular notice that you find in TED, you couldn't find it in the Open Data Service. This is kind of an edge case that might be either an unsupported SDK version, but we're working to add all these missing notices, or some other particular problem with that notice. Everything that is not published is flagged to us and we address it, but that explains the
discrepancy. Thank you very much. I think that is important for people to understand.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question, which seems to be the last question, if I'm not mistaken, where can we find the available building blocks that we can use in our queries? Are they listed somewhere altogether?
Anup, I said that you want to pick this up.
Yeah, I guess this is related to Open Data Service, and the building blocks that we are referring to is the query library in the TED Open Data Service, the existing 35 queries. These queries can be used as the building blocks because some of the queries addresses notice count, some addresses buyers information, some addresses contracts, some addresses winners information. Because it's there as a sample so that you can build using that. So you can combine the parts that you're interested in and pick up those parts and then build it together. So that's why we're referring it as the building blocks. Hope that answers.
If I may add something here, I wouldn't call them really building blocks. If I wanted to find two memorable words for them, I would call them stepping stones, because they're not really building blocks in the sense that the building block gives you the idea that, okay, these are the types of things that I can, or these are the things that I can put together. These are just examples that give you an idea how to build your own query. You can start by looking at it, try to understand how it works, then tweaking it a little bit to see how you can make it different or closer to what you would like. And eventually you will get to a point where you can write your query, without looking at an example. So I would call them stepping stones better. But yeah, the idea is the same. It's in the query library of Data TED Europa.
Okay. So we will add that also when we publish the answers. Have I missed anything, Cindy? I think that we went through all the questions in Slido. We also took the question that had been published in or posted in the chat. I answered another question from the chat, which was about the recording. It will be available on YouTube. And if I don't see other questions, and we are actually quite on time, I would just hand it over to Luca for closing this workshop. Luca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura, for the great moderation and for coordinating the organization of this workshop, which is a all-unit event. All three sectors of the unit have been involved. I hope users found the presentations interesting and that we replied to the questions. There are at least one that which we will come back, as Laura said, by publishing the recordings, the presentations, and the Q&A session. I would like to stress that we strive as a unit to provide users with reusable data of the best possible quality. This we do both at input side through action on eForms and at output side, as we try to demonstrate with the new TED Open Data service. Of course, the data quality is still an issue and depends mainly on input side, but as I think we are able to demonstrate that we are trying to act on that. I would also like to stress that we cannot provide ad hoc solution for each user needs, but that each user can flag issues, requests, and ask changes that, if possible, we gladly are ready to implement for all users according to the open data principles, that if you say data are there for any possible use and stimulating innovation, stimulating competition, and provision of new services. I would like again to remind you that TED Together will soon start, we'll announcing it 24th and 25th of November. We are open to ideas for presentations, so don't hesitate to propose us also use cases that could be interesting for the whole community of TED e-senders, standard community, and reuser. So thanks a lot to my colleagues and to all users. I hope to see you at the TED Together event, and don't hesitate to contact us if you have specific questions. Thanks a lot, and bon appétit.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.